from what all she was doing, and drove her car in, came inside, decided to go off on one of her tangents. Everything was good. I mean, everything was wrong. There was nothing good about anything. And after going through her various loops of claiming this, claiming that, some based in fact, some blown out of proportion, some of it just almost unintelligible, I decided to go find her keys wherever they were and take them and make sure she didn't leave again. At which point, after some back and forth stuff, she decided what she wanted to do was for us to both get in our car. We're living in San Antonio, and drive to Galveston yet that night on the coast. Drive to Galveston yet that night and be there in time to see the sunrise over the Gulf next morning. Okay, well, had been drinking enough to know where I knew I'm not a candidate to be driving, and she insisted on it. Then she realized that her keys were gone because she decided she was going to go to Galveston. But when she looked around and figured out the keys were gone, she knew who had taken them. At that point, I went into the extra bedroom and locked the door. It was a room about the size of this one here. And I locked the door from the inside. And it was one of those locks where you can't get it open from the outside. I mean, there's not even a little hole to push in and pop the thing. So she couldn't do a damn thing about it. And I went in there. There was a bed, and it was late that night, and I laid down and tried to go to sleep. Well, here's this educated person who goes out and helps people from a public agency standing outside my door, getting more and more agitated. And she started kicking the door. Kicking. You know, like animals kicking to get out of their stall. In this case, to get into the room, all right? Saying she's going to call her brother. I finally yelled through the door, "Call your brother and talk to him about what you really want to do and see what he has to say." Well, this went on, but the point that I'm getting to is I'm inside that room, and I'm realizing how irrational and actually violent this person who I didn't know her. The person standing outside my door was something other than what I knew, who I'd gone to Texas with. And I felt, and here's the punchline, I felt real fear. I feared for if I went out and tried to calm her down, what might she do? And she was in such a state that I knew I couldn't trust on what she'd do. And I suddenly realized to myself, I felt real fear. And I couldn't remember having had fear like that ever since the moment I was in a rafting trip on the Snake River in Idaho. The damn raft went over, and we were in a rocky terrain where any rock could suck that you had hit could suck you down. And I realized that death could happen. And that was the last time I had felt real fear of that level. Feeling that real fear made me realize I was in no condition because of my own drinking. The condition I was in no condition to deal with her rationally. I was helpless. I was in no condition to manage her or help her manage herself. I was out of control. And that made me come face to face with, I can't solve her problems, but looking at myself, I wasn't in control, and it was because I was intoxicated. Well, nothing actually happened that night other than I came face to face with the fact I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be where I can't go and solve a problem rationally. And I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be like that. And I don't want to, and here came up the other thing, and I don't want to always be planning for where my next drink is. That always pissed me off. And it would derail me from other fun things that I could do or could plan. And I was always thinking about when I could have another drink.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't in control of that. And I realized I wasn't in control of that. As a result of those two things, but precipitated by remembering my educated, socially conscious wife kicking the door because I took her keys away from her. Unbelievable. But precipitated by that, I decided that I was simply not going to drink anymore. Now, what I did, yes, I went to some AA, and I respected it and participated, and it was good for me. But basically what I did was I just set my mind to the fact that I was not going to drink. Now, if that's called white knuckling, well, that's what I did, okay? However, it was how I started. After the tough part, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, 2, 3, 4, 5 months, after that tough part, I began to appreciate the freedom that I could now feel. I could feel the freedom. I was thinking for myself. I was not thinking driven by alcohol and the wish to have that next drink. And during those months, I got into some new things. I tried to revive my memories and my learning of Spanish. And so I took adult education classes, and I did make use of meetings like AA. However, I considered it my own project. My grandmother was a great talker, and she'd sit me down occasionally, and we would talk. And she was a great believer in you can do whatever you set your mind to. I believe my mother used to tell me that too. But boy, who I really remember is Grandma Hazel, man. She'd give you a talk about that. And it wasn't mean talk. It was just a very determined talk. And I felt that I could ride with that state of mind and set my mind to accomplishing this. And I apparently did, because here I am not really wanting to go drink. And it's getting on 13 years.
That's good. She sounds like a very smart woman.
And my mother, too. Both. None of them were preachy, but they'd sit down and tell you, here's some ways you can go about running your own show. Mm-hmm. And both of them did that. And Marney knew one of them, my mom, Lorena.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Grandma Lorena. She was a piece of work. She definitely said what was on her mind, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Love you, Grandma.
I think she'd like me.
I think she would.
I don't know about she would like my time travel idea, but I think she would say, boy, I think you're taking it a little too far there. Let's focus on the day and realistic goals. But no, it sounds like though control was something that was big for you, and like you said, you were in a situation where you couldn't control it because you were drunk. You were buzzed, you intoxicated yourself, and you didn't like that feeling. And I think when you said that you just white knuckled it or whatever, I think that you came to terms with, and this is something I had to do too, and Marnie as well, to come to terms with being okay with never drinking again. And for me, that was the scariest part of this recovery thing. It's to know that, I'm going to live till I'm 70, 80, whatever, and I can never drink again. And at one point it flips to, I don't ever want to drink again. Like, I feel good waking up in the morning. I don't like chasing down the next drink. And if I start, I cannot stop. And I'm a slave to it,
And you start to think of those years you have left as ones you are going to be too precious to throw back into the pit of alcohol. You want those years where you can feel that freedom. You want all those years for freedom.
Mm-hmm. I used to say that I'm going to stop when I have kids. That would have been horrible. Having a kid wouldn't have stopped me. I would like to think it would have, but there's no woman that was going to wait around long enough, and I think, like you just said, to waste the years that I have left, no, I don't want to do that. And we don't know how much time we have left. And a lot of people do have a hard time with forgiving themselves for wasting those years. Again, you have to accept that too, so I think acceptance is a huge thing, with accepting that, nope, I'm not going to drink again. I can't drink again. And it'll flip for you. If you're in early recovery, just trust me, it'll flip and you'll say, wow, I'm glad I don't have to drink again. And you're going to look back at that and go, why was I so scared to not drink? Well, it's because that's what your brain does. Your brain's built to keep doing that kind of behavior because it calms you down when you're stressed out at work or, had a bad day. And I'm sure your wife, man, she probably had some stories that I'm sure I don't want to hear them, stuff that'll just make your heart break, seeing what other people do to their children, and they might have been in active addiction too, who knows? But it's a tough cycle. Forgiving yourself, accepting that, yep, that's the past. I'm not getting my 30s back. My 20s are gone as well, and I have to be good with it and make the most of what I have now and hang out with people. Now, how did that work because you were still married and you decided to get sober, right, Kaylin?
Correct. I decided to get sober. And your question is going to be, and if it isn't, here's what I'm telling you it is. How did it work? Did she continue to drink?
Yes. How did that relationship, how'd that go for you?
Well, if you hadn't gone there, I was going there.
All right.
At first, she was in her sober state. She was supportive of me not drinking. She said, this is good. And, I'd like to do so too at some point. But it was pretty clear she wasn't going in that direction. She simply wasn't going to be able to do that. That is to say, give up alcohol. I don't know that she ever seriously tried. But we sort of lumped along with me not drinking and her drinking. But I say it this way. It became clearer and clearer to both her and to me over time that she wasn't fun anymore for me. When I was drinking, it wasn't so bad. And she was fun when she was drinking. But she wasn't fun anymore for me, and guess what? I wasn't fun anymore for her. I was a fuddy-duddy who didn't want to go and sit at the bar and drink and try to socialize and do that sort of stuff. And it was doomed. I don't think there was any way that situation could have been saved. She ultimately moved out, just packed her stuff up and moved to a different place up in town, in San Antonio, as it turns out, where we were. And I stayed out at the farm with the cats and the cows across the fence, and I was happy. And I was happy, all by myself.
But it was a sense of relief.
Oh, absolutely. It was like a big burden went off my shoulders. I could just plan on, talking to my kids, or when would they come to visit, and at that point, I believe Marney was living. Were you at that point? Were you somewhere around? You were there.
Yeah, I was here in Traverse City, and that was a period of my life where I was sober as well. So we had that we could talk about.
I remember once saying to you, your sobriety at that point was something I wanted. Mm-hmm. I could see how good it was for you, and I wanted that for me, and that your example was something that was impacting my motivational level to continue what I was doing. Remember I told you that once on the phone?
I do remember that. And
okay.
Actually, this is a good point to bring up, is because that was like 2007, I believe.
Yep.
Something like that.
07, 08.
Yeah, and that's right. And yeah, actually, we can talk about that because I did get sober, and I was feeling really good about the choices that I was making. And I'm going to follow this up with, however, that section of my life, I'm glad that it happened the way that it happened, but I was dealing with legal issues, and